This is the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. Let's go. On each episode, we talk about a new industry or market, including the entrepreneurial opportunities, the pains, and the surprises of that industry. Listen, the business world is so broad, and we are here to dissect all of the different ways that entrepreneurs make money.
Software, you make it one time and sell it 1,000 times.
E-com spaces, man, those things sell for like an 8x multiple. It's ridiculous.
Three main ways that we make money, and the primary one is actually ad sales.
The goal is usually to exit within 3 to 7 years.
I'm your host, Matthew Brown, and I've created this podcast to help you discover hidden opportunities. Thank you for tuning in, and here is today's episode. Welcome to an episode of the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. This is going to be a unique one. I did not interview anybody for this episode, but I did ask a group of young entrepreneurs to share an answer to this question. The question is, how did you come up with your idea, and how did you know it was a good one? So I just sent out a text message to a group of young entrepreneurs that I know and asked them if they would respond and send me an audio clip. And so that is what you guys are going to listen to today. Most of the audio clips are between about 3 to 7 minutes. And there's somewhere between like 8, I think there's like 8 people that responded. So I think there's about 8 people. So I hope that you guys enjoy this, and the reason why I wanted to ask that question is just for college-age kind of aspiring entrepreneurs. I think it's good to hear the experiences of other people and how they came up with their idea of how to start a business and what their ideas are. So hopefully you can get an idea of how a lot of people have done it, and then you can emulate that yourself. So I'm going to start, and first off, we will start with John Dinkel's business. So I'm going to turn it over to John, and here is the clip that he sent me.
So I came up with my business after a couple of very interesting interactions I had with clients, as well as in running my own company previously called Manga Sensei, where I was running a podcast teaching Japanese. It all really came about where I was thinking, hey, how can I make money from my podcast? And I started selling a comic book. After the comic book, I started selling posters on the internet, little things like that to make, $15 to $50 a day. And then I learned, hey, I could do this a lot better. There's gotta be something else out there. So I started trying to create an app, and I started doing all these different things to try to make my little podcast be useful in the world. And, I eventually figured out that the podcast itself was the value prop, that I knew how to grow an audience. And I knew how this world worked when so many people didn't understand how this world worked. So I started charging friends that wanted to do a podcast. I would, and just kind of seeing if there was a market out there for it. I'd be like, hey, I heard you want to start a podcast, or hey, I heard somebody reached out to me and said, hey, I want to start a podcast. So I get started. And from there, I started developing relationships with people where I would help do their podcast, just get them started, then help them get recorded, then help them get edited. And over time, I was able to really grow what they were doing. Now, it's just kind of interesting because I also didn't know how to charge for it, so I had to make sure I could live off of this. My wife at the time was a major limitation to what I was able to do. She's still my wife. But she didn't want me to be doing a company that was going to be subtracting from our family. And she also wanted to make sure that it was going to help me grow. But she didn't want it to eat up all of my time in the world. And that's kind of an odd thing to say as an entrepreneur. But I was already doing so many hours on Manga Sensei a week, trying to work my other jobs and spend time with my wife that she wasn't making enough money to get by. So she wanted to make sure that I was going to make enough money to be able to provide for us, and at the same time be able to do something that would support our family. So that was a big limitation of my thinking. So I had to think of a job or a company that would allow me to do such. So when I learned how much my podcasting knowledge was worth, that's when I really figured this could be a real company. A lot of podcasters help a lot of other folks. So if I can do 2 seconds here, 2 seconds there, and work on something, but not bring enough money in, then it's not going to be worth my time. So I had to find out if it was worth it with pricing too. So I started, charging $50, then I charged $500, then I started charging $5,000, and eventually I found out where people are comfortable, and I figured, hey, if I get, 4 of these people a month, I could just really have something really cool. And then I learned, hey, what if I could do contracts? And so all these things really built the one thing upon the other. There was no one giant moment where I was like, this is how my company will start. It's more that I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur after I realized that in myself in 2014. And then after that, 2015. And then after that, it was just learning how to do it. And then once I found an area, I don't think my company is a sexy company. It's not like, ooh, I'm doing the next big tech startup. I'm doing something that is powerful in of itself. So I figured that'd be the best thing to do. So that's how I came up with my company, was little tiny steps at a time. And that's what I found to be most helpful.
And next, I'm going to turn the time over to Todd Paskett, and he will tell you a little bit about his idea and his business.
Hey Matthew, here is that reply to your question. So I'm Todd Paskett. I'm the founder and CEO of Auxilium Automation. Matthew asked me a very important question. That's how do they come up with good ideas? For me, how it kind of started as an entrepreneur, my mind is always thinking of new ideas. I mean, every single day I just see scenarios and potentially like, oh, we could do something there, that would be useful, or we could do something here, that would create value. And I took that and I was given some advice to write down all my ideas. So every single day I wrote down at least one of just something I felt like would be an innovation that people would love. That's kind of how it started, and that's really, my mind was just flowing all the time, thinking of all these new things. And eventually I met the guy who's now my partner, Grant Hagen, who was a genius in robotics and automation. And kind of knowing him and seeing a potential partnership here, my mind kind of shifted towards robotics and, okay, how can we use robots in an industry, or which industry really needs robots? So kind of with this creative juices flowing, and now with this point or this constraint of maybe if we went this road, what are some possibilities? We then took the next step, and so I think you really make a good idea, is we went and talked to potential customers. So we talked to customers or people from all types of different industries. As we did that, we found that there was a huge lack of innovation within the construction industry, the roofing industry to be specific. And as we talked to different contractors and roof workers, we found that they really needed innovation. They had tools and things, shovels, picks, rakes, that they were still using to do roofing, even though it's 2019 or 2018, I guess, at the time. So they're using things that have been used since asphalt shingles were created. And so that's kind of how it started for us, was this idea, kind of getting some constraints. And then once we had an idea we thought would work, we went directly to the customer to validate it. That's kind of how it all started. To get to the specific robots that we're doing now, we then take this, we went back to the construction workers or to these roofers, kind of pitched different ideas to them, and then using the lean model canvas, which I would give a huge shout out to. Any potential entrepreneur should be using that, just to really, has all these key points to see, is your business model really viable? And that's really what goes from now, do I have a good idea that'll work, or that leads people to like, to do I have an idea that I can actually make money from and make a successful company. So that would be my big things, was think all the time, get those brain juices flowing, add some constraints. That could be things that you like, things that you're interested in, things that you're good at, and then go talk to the customer, and then use the lean model canvas to make sure your business model is really set, and that kind of gets all the basic parts in. So yeah, that was what I would say to how you create a good idea and make sure it's a good one.
Next, we're going to hear from a previous guest who was on the show a while back. His name is Sterling Jones with JoJo's Chocolate, and here is his story and how he found his idea.
All right, Matthew. So for your question, how did I come up with the idea and then make sure it was a good one? Well, first and foremost, the original recipe, the original product that we sell is a 7% dark chocolate bar with added protein that's low in sugar, helps satisfy sugar cravings. And the original product was actually developed by my partner, my mom, co-founder. So she was the one that actually came up with it. But what I'd say on that note is I was the one that then turned that into a product that we could sell and develop and build a brand around. So how I came up with the idea that this was something that we could get behind and could turn into a company was identifying the pain that this was solving. And that's how my mom came up with the actual product that we sell. Was she had a pain, which was she loved chocolate, but she knew she needed to eat less sugar. And so she developed something that satisfied that pain for herself. And for several months was enjoying it for herself and solving her own pain. So when I identified and saw that, I thought and recognized there are more people than just my mom who has that same pain of wanting to enjoy something sweet, something that tastes good, something that satisfies that sugar craving, but doesn't leave them feeling guilty and isn't loaded with sugar. So how I went to about validating, I guess I would say, that there actually are more people. And what makes a good idea, I guess I would say, is are people willing to pay you for it? And are people recognizing that it's a big enough pain that they will buy a service to solve it? Because there's a lot of pains in this world and problems that are small, and we all deal with them every day and just deal with it because it's not a big enough pain that we want to find a solution for. There's annoyances, I would say, but this is an actual pain and problem. So how I went about identifying if that idea was a good idea, meaning is it a big enough problem that people would pay me for, was first and foremost, I identified who I thought would be people that had that problem, and I presented the product to them. So we went to a CrossFit competition, and we set up a booth. We set up an opportunity for people to buy it. So these were consumers who lived healthy, followed a specific diet that didn't allow them to eat a lot of sugar. So they were aware of that, but it was the same pain and problem that my mom was solving, is trying to eat healthy, but still craving sugar. So we presented at a CrossFit competition, and this was super grassroots. I mean, it was from the cookie sheet trays that my mom was making it, putting in little cellophane bags with a sticker on it, and putting it on a table and asking people to pay us for it. And we sold out within a day and a half, and the feedback was that, wow, if I can eat this every day, I would buy it, And so we started recognizing this was a pain that people had. From there, I mean, that was the first little small test. From there, we went to some gyms. We just went to people, and we went to people that weren't my friends because, I think you want to go and you want to present it in a way that people don't know that it's yours, because people don't want to offend you. So we went to yoga studios that we try to sell to. We went to CrossFit gyms. And really it was, were consumers, could they recognize that this was a solution to a problem that they had, and would they pay us for it? And that was through finding any and every channel where our consumers would be. And so really finally where I would say, validated it fully, where I thought we definitely could turn this into something bigger, was on Amazon. And that was because that's where shoppers go. So if you're selling something, and for us we were selling low in sugar dark chocolate or healthy chocolate, where consumers that were going to Amazon and searching healthy chocolate, would they buy JoJo's? And if they bought it, would they come back? and on Amazon allowed us to validate that. And so from there, we saw consistent sales. And that's when we, I guess, really got the most customer validation. But, along the way, I would say that personally, deep down, I had a strong belief in the fact that this product could help a lot of people. And that's why I believed in it from the get-go, is I saw that it would help people. And that was what was enough motivation for me to keep going. So that, hopefully sums up. My mom created it, solving a pain for herself. And then I saw that there was going to be more people that had that pain, and we found where they were and tried to sell it to them. And that sums up how we went about. So thank you, Matthew.
Following Sterling Jones, we're going to listen to my friend Sean Nasseth.
Hey guys, my name is Sean Nasseth. I'm really excited to be a guest on Entrepreneur on Campus. I recently founded a company called SKO, S-K-O. It's an online resale platform. Real quick, a little bit about SKO. Simply, if you have anything you want to sell online, you just go to list it on SKO, and we shoot it out to a handful of other platforms like eBay, KSL, Facebook Marketplace, Let Go, Craigslist, and a bunch of others, just to really help your item gain traction and really reach a wider market. But anyway, I just want to talk real briefly about some of the things that worked for me in coming up with this idea, and ultimately what helped me feel confident enough to pursue it. So about a year ago, really, I just began identifying pains that I experienced not only in my own life, but also inefficiencies that I saw in the world around me, and some of the pains that others experience as well. I tried to really develop to become a more observant person in the world around me, and just began taking real quick notes on my phone whenever I saw something or read about something that I felt could be improved. And I think that the reality is that there will always be better ways of doing things, right? And especially as we wrap technology around most things in our lives. But for a year, I wrote down things that were pains I experienced and would inquire of others some of the pains they experienced. And that's really what I did to kind of nail down a pain and see if there could be a solution or an idea that I could work with. I developed quite a lengthy list of absolutely terrible ideas to potential opportunities and everything in between, and anything goes. And often the crappy ideas that I thought of initially sparked good ideas, and so I just wrote them all down. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'd recommend, is just being observant and writing notes on your phone whenever something pops into your mind. So I picked a couple that I felt were simple enough and feasible, yet still had great potential in a big market, usually $1 billion plus. And how I really discovered the idea for SKO came from personal experience. I always thought that it was such a pain for me to create separate accounts whenever I had to sell something on eBay and Craigslist and a bunch of other online marketplaces, and then list the item on each with a description and the specs, and then upload pictures from my laptop to each site individually. That was a big pain for me, and I wanted to see if that was a pain for others as well. And I really wished I could submit it in one place and have it automatically shoot out to all of the others. So I validated that pain and that solution. And the validation process is what ultimately told me whether or not I should go for it and kill it or just move on. So what that process looked like for me was I just went to Walmart and asked about 50 people in my target market if this was, one, a pain for them, and two, if they would pay for this solution and how much. And generally, if you get a rate of willingness to purchase over 70%, then that tells you that your idea is a good one and it validates initially. So that's what I did for the validation with SCO to help me know if I had landed on a good idea, per se. And most of these principles come from the book Nail It, Then Scale It, which are principles that I've used to see if any idea checks out. I really think a lot of people have ideas, but many don't create something from it. But this process was the easiest and cheapest way for me to know whether or not my idea was feasible, whether people would be willing to pay for it, stuff like that. So anyway, I hope this helps in some way, but if you don't build your dream, someone else will hire you to build yours. So take the chance, especially if you're young. I'm a big fan of this podcast, and if you're listening to it, you're already on the right track. Thanks.
Alrighty, next we're going to listen to Collin Cole.
My name is Colin, and my company's name is One Consulting. And the way that I found the idea for my business as well as validated it was actually through failure. And I would highly recommend that other college entrepreneurs do not take the same path that I did. And hopefully my story can share some advice. And so 11 months ago, started an education company in Asia. And I just thought, I know the culture, I know the people, I know what they're willing to pay, I know what they're willing to pay for, and this is a big gap, that they need. And so I was really excited, and everyone just kept telling me, just start, kept hearing all these entrepreneurs just keep saying those two words. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to start. And so I didn't validate it at all. I just thought my idea is so genius that I need to start this as soon as possible. So I put in a bunch of money, I put in a bunch of time, and I just said my idea is genius and it's going to revolutionize everything. And at the beginning, it really looked very promising, and I got a great business partner. And in the first few months, we had a few companies over in Asia who were very interested, and they said, this sounds really great. Come to us in a few months and we'll make the big decision. And so I said, wow, these companies really want to work with us, and just my personal validation of thinking it's a great idea, plus these companies saying possibly they would be interested, was more than enough validation for me. And I was just very arrogant and very vain. And because of my arrogance, I made a lot of promises that I wasn't able to keep. And for one project in particular, we took on and hired and trained about 60 part-time employees and made a bunch of promises. Well, it turns out we went back to Asia, and with things that were going on politically and also not as much interest as I thought there would be, we ended up losing millions of dollars in revenue and disappointing 60 plus people. And this hit me super hard in the face. And this was the first time, obviously, as a college entrepreneur that I had really been rocked and, let down so many people. And it finally gave me this paradigm shift of, maybe I don't know everything, and that I'm not even in their demographic. I'm a Caucasian male in the United States. I can't make all these assumptions without even being there and being someone who lives in that country. And so that was not a great way to learn the importance of having a great idea, but secondly, validating that idea. And so the way that One Consulting started was we had a friend in India, and his son was at a college in America, and he goes, my son's in college, he's very shy, he needs some help with interview prep and finding very good internships and a great job. He just really is out of the loop. And so he said, yeah, of course, happy to help, a good friend. And so we started coaching this guy up and weekly interview prep, helped him on his resume, made a few introductions, really skyrocketed his confidence, and he was able to land a great job right after college. And this, went off in my head, well, maybe this is actually a a great consulting business. And so we went back to the guy in Asia and said, if you have any friends who are in the same position, we'd love to help them out the way that we helped your son. And he goes, I've been telling everybody about what you guys have been able to do, and I already have 5 families who are ready to sign contracts with you and to, pay some money. And we said, wow, this is a much better way of validating. And we reached out to a few more people, mostly within Hong Kong and India. And they said, not only is this such a great idea, but I also have 3 or 4 friends that are in the exact same boat that need your services. And that's exactly how our business got started, and that's how we started making money. And it really took just a few months of working for free, a few months of validating this idea of, doing stuff. We didn't put in any money. We didn't do anything, absurd. And that's how it started. And I think that's a big myth within entrepreneurship, is that you should just get started. And, the stats aren't on your side. With 1 in 10 businesses succeed in the first year, and of those, 10%, only another 10% make it through year 5. And I personally believe that a lot of businesses fail just because they don't do basic validation, basic break-even analysis, and they, just don't take a few months, maybe three months tops, to actually validate their idea, validate their business model, their management team, and everything like that. And now, honestly, is probably the world's best time, in the history of the world, to validate an idea. So if you have a great idea for a product, it's very cheap to validate the idea. Let's say I have a clothing idea, and I think it's the most genius idea ever, and I say all moms are going to buy this. Well, I'm not a mom. I'm a male college student. And so the best way that you could probably validate an idea right now is through like an Indiegogo or a Kickstart, where it doesn't take that much capital and it doesn't take that much time. You just get a few samples over in Asia of the clothing that you want, and you spend a few $100s creating this video, and then the people, all of America, the whole world, validate your idea for you. If they pay for the service or they pay for the product, this clothing in particularly, and they help fund what your goal is on Indiegogo or Kickstart, that gives you a lot of validation that your idea is actually good. Whereas if you only raise, $25, maybe it's time to rethink your idea, that it's not as genius as you thought. And I have a buddy who works at a company that does all the videos for companies that want to go on Indiegogo and Kickstart. And surprisingly enough, most of their clients actually aren't the small startups. They're actually big businesses like Disney and Lego, because they still don't know what will appeal to people, and with timing of everything, what their target market is, and if people are actually going to like their ideas. And so they go through this company, make these videos, and put their product or service on Indiegogo. And if it goes gangbusters, then they know that this is a great product. And it's great for them because they just spend a few $1,000s of money, but they validate their idea, which will eventually save them millions of dollars and months and years of time. And that really wasn't what I did, and my arrogance and I just thinking that my idea was so good is what led to the downfall of my first business. And it really hit me hard. And yes, you're gonna be hit hard a bunch of times in entrepreneurship, but there's also a lot of times where businesses shouldn't even get started because they haven't done basic break-even analysis and they haven't done very basic validation. And a lot of the times the validation is just free and just takes a few months of time. And I think that is a big reason why a bunch of entrepreneurs fail and why 9 in 10 businesses fail within the first year. And so that would just be my advice of just taking calculated risks after doing your due diligence would be the best advice that I could probably give an entrepreneur. And I learned the hard way and kind of wish that I wouldn't have. So yeah, that's my advice.
Now it's time to hear from Addison Hildebrandt.
So how did I come up with my idea for my business, and how did I know that was a good one? Basically, I have to share my story. So about 2 years ago, I came home from my mission serving in Spain overseas. And when I got back, I was like, dang, I want to date again. And I moved to a different city. I didn't know anybody there. I wanted to get to know people. I was like, well, I remember back up north when I was in high school, I'd go country dancing. There has to be country dancing down here in southern Utah. I mean, it's the most hick place in all of Utah. They have to have it. And so I looked up, Googled it. I tried calling people. I mean, they used to have it. I talked to people that I was just starting to meet. I was like, do you know if they have country dancing? I used to have a ton of fun doing it. They're like, no, that would be such a cool idea. I mean, I totally go, but they don't have it. And after hearing that so many times, like honestly, I heard that from so many people. No, they don't have it. I would totally go if they had it. They used to, but they don't now. And I was like, dang, man, that would be such a good business idea. And meanwhile, I was managing my mom's company as a self-help company. So I would say, man, I'd love to do this, but I just don't have time because I'm doing other things. So after about a year of asking, and like this was every single week I'd ask and talk to people, no, I'd love to. So after about a year of this, I finally was like, what the heck? Why don't I just start this up? I could spend a few hours every week, wouldn't take that much time, and just get people together, and I could start a little business off to the side. I wasn't thinking about it going anywhere or being that big. I just thought it'd make a little bit extra money on the side, but mainly it would be because I wanted to. It was something that I was passionate about. I wanted to meet people, so number one on my list of why I was doing it was to meet my future spouse. I have a list of this. I have it in one of my journals right over here. It was back in July 20th, I believe, of last year, 2018. Number one was to meet my future spouse. Number two was to make quality friends. And number three was to learn more about business. And number four was to make money. In that order. I accomplished number one. I met my future spouse while doing it. Number two, I did make good friends. Number three, I learned a ton and am still learning a ton about business through this. And number four, it is profitable. That's how I found my idea. How did I know that was good? Number one, the market was telling me. Everyone was saying, that would be such a good idea. I would totally go. That's something that I want to do. And the biggest thing that I heard from people was, there is nothing to do in St. George. There's nothing to do in St. George. So all I say in my marketing is, you know how there's nothing to do in St. George? And everybody's like, yes, there's nothing to do in St. George. Well, actually, we have country dancing twice a week. You should come. And it resonates with people. And people that it doesn't, it's like, I can go hike in the mountains. And sure, there's a lot to do outside. But there is nowhere in St. George where people can come and meet other people, date. It's especially for college kids, which is a college town. That's how I found my idea, and that I found that it was a good one, and I love it so much. So you guys should come when you're in southern Utah. Come down, look up Heart of Country Swing. It's super fun, and yeah.
And last but not least, we get to hear from Marx Acosta-Rubio.
Hello, my name is Marx, co-founder and CEO of Neptune Plastics, which makes single-use plastic that is good for the environment. So how did I come up with this idea? So, I mean, it's not a novel idea. There's a lot of people who want to solve a problem like this, right? But how do we get to where we're at? So, on my mission, when I was living in Florida for 2 years, I'd bike around and I'd always have these business ideas. And so I'd just write them down. And I committed to myself that when I came home and went to college, that I would just go full-on action in whatever direction I chose. And so I came home and I read this list of, I think it was like 4 pages of business ideas, and I chose one, which is just water bottle that's not bad for the environment, which isn't super novel. but went for it anyways. And so I knew I couldn't do this alone, so I founded my first co-founder, Grant. And then we needed a technical co-founder, and so we found Hal. And that's the three of us. That's still the three co-founders to this day. And what was interesting about Neptune is the amount of pivots and changes that we did. So if we wanted to know how we turned our idea into a good idea, we just look at just the different shifts, the pivot shifts, obviously, of what we did. And so we went for the water bottle thing for a couple of, like 2 to 3 months. And in the water bottle thing, we first found through a focus group that the reason people don't like the water bottles that you can't see the water in is because you can't see the water. So like paper and whatnot, people want to be able to see the water, know it's clear, they want to know how much water's in it. So we thought that was interesting. And so we thought we had to develop a water bottle that was good for the environment, but you could see into. At least you could see the water, or at least the water level. And so that's what we were developing for a couple of months until we entered a competition on campus. It was an innovation competition. And we set up our little booth, and we had mentors coming by. And one mentor after the other, like, oh, this is great, super cool, keep going. We were really, really pumped, and we thought it was good. We were in a good direction until one guy who sat down, and this is the kicker. He was an industry expert in plastics and bringing plastics to market. And so he sits down, he's like, look, this isn't going to work. And he gave us the reasons. And we realized that we needed to change our business model to an extent. And so we did. And so that's how we turned our idea into a good idea, is you listen to experts. And so all from that point, all the way until where we are now, it was just little pivots, little by little, as we talked to people who knew what they were talking about, and as we talked to customers, and just all those little things that we did to turn our idea into what I'm really proud of today, which is the current phase of Neptune Plastics, which will probably be very different in 3 months, just as we fix things and as we grow and as we learn. Talking to customers, talking to experts. And so how you make your idea a good idea, I guess. I mean, how we did it is just talking to people, just go learn. There's this huge inclination, if you read the book, I think it's Nail It and Scale It, where they talk about how you have to just get out of the office. And it's very true. You're not going to learn anything. I mean, you can learn some things just contemplating on your own, but your assumptions, I think it's one out of 20 assumptions is right. I think that's something that somebody told me one time. But anyways, you just got to go for it. And that's what we did. And so the story was just our growth over time through our just learning. I hope that was helpful.
And I'd actually have one more that I'd like you all to listen to, and it is Tanner Smith.
So how did I come up with my idea, and how did I know that it was a good one? Well, I think there's a couple things to this question of how did I come up with my idea. I didn't per se come up with this and invent, the digital marketing agency, but I knew that I had a passion for it, and I knew that just by experimenting and experiencing a lot of different opportunities, I put myself in a lot of situations really throughout my life to learn a lot about the skill and to find some mentors and to ask the right questions to the right people that I think really guided me along and helped me make a decision that I knew going into my agency, starting my digital marketing agency, that it was going to be a good experience. I knew it was going to be hard, but I knew that I was going to enjoy it, and it was going to be something for me that I knew I could be successful at. Same thing with my business partner, Benson Lewis. Partnering up together, I think we both knew that we had some skills and some different things that we each brought to the table that we could form a partnership and start a business together and have it take off and be more successful than if we were just to do it on our own. So I think a couple of things there is if you're looking to start a business, whatever it may be, put yourself in the right situations to learn if it's going to be something that you are going to be willing and able to do when times get tough, and if you're going to want to stick through it, stick it out. Because I feel like a lot of people start businesses that they think, man, this is going to be fun, this is going to be a good idea, per se, and then they're not going to be able to commit to it long term and ready to really dig in and put in the work that's required to make it successful. So I think that's a huge part of that. The other part of the question is, how did I know it was going to be a good idea? And that's just kind of what it comes down to, piggybacking off of the first question, is if it's going to, if you're going to work, your business will work. If you're going to put in the time, to make it successful, and you're going to, especially with the service-based industry, right? If you're going to provide an incredible service, incredible fulfillment to your clients, then it will work. It will be a good idea. That's not always the case. Obviously, when it comes to different products, there's a lot of different research you need to do. If you're looking to start an Amazon store or you're looking to start an e-commerce agency, etc., dealing with products and doing a lot of market research is going to be a lot more important. But I already knew there was going to be a market there. I already knew that there's a huge market in what we focus on and what we specialize in, which is building out lead generation and custom sales funnels for authors and speakers, helping them to monetize their following, build a following, and build an omnipresence online. So I know there's a huge market there, and so for me, I knew it was going to be a good idea. And I hope that helps answer your question, and I hope you find this useful, man.
Great. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that you were able to gain some value from listening to all of these young entrepreneurs who are out there to make a difference in the world. And hopefully you have one or two things that you can actually take away. I know that we listen to a lot of content, we read a lot of content, and I'm hoping that out of everything that you've heard today, that you can pick one or two of those things and you can apply them into your life, into your business, and you can be inspired to move forward and progress. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I would like to just cover really briefly why I decided to start this podcast. I've always been a podcast listener, and I really decided that I was going to do it when one of the people who's actually on this, Sterling Jones, he pushed me towards it. Plus, I'd already thought about it a little bit before, and I love just the whole concept of young businesses, startups, and entrepreneurship. And I wanted to go out and learn a lot. And I've had a history. So in the past, I've gone and interviewed people when I've been trying to explore some options of career choices or other pursuits I've had in my life. I wanted to be the best at what I'm going to do. I want to learn from the best and be able to apply some of the principles that they have. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I started the podcast, is I just wanted to go ask these questions to people, and it kind of gave me a platform and an excuse to do so. And so it's been a lot of fun. Sometimes I've questioned a little bit whether or not I've wanted to maintain it, just because it does require some effort. Nothing crazy, but it just requires some consistency. And so sometimes I do question how much I get out of it versus how much I put into it. I always want to I want to get more out of a system than I put into it. And I think that I have gotten more out of this just from the relationships that I built, the learnings that I've had, and it's just such a unique thing to do. Not a lot of people are doing this, and so it's been a blast. And honestly, the relationships that I built from it have been very important, and I have met a lot of very reputable local entrepreneurs, and they know my name, they know a little bit about me. I have their contact information, and I've usually sent them a thank you note after our interview. So I've been able to foster these relationships, which I think is a very long-term investment, and it's not all about the investment. It's just about building relationships. But I think that long-term, that's something that will pay off in a lot of ways, not just financially, but perhaps emotionally, and who knows where this can lead me. But I think something to take away from my story is just to if you have an idea, just to try it. I've mentioned before some ideas that I've tried that have just failed miserably, and I've actually had several of those, and that's a good thing, because I've tried them, I've attempted them, and I've learned that the market does not want something, and then I've quickly pivoted. I haven't tried to develop products in depth and then test it with the market afterwards. I've only tested very basic products and ideas, and if they don't function, then they don't function. And anyway, that's kind of a takeaway that you can get from me. So thank you guys for listening to the Entrepreneur on Campus podcast. I hope that you all become entrepreneurs on campus. If you come up with a good idea and you want to start it, just go for it. Just start putting the puzzle pieces together. And there's a lot of different opinions on whether or not you should wait, and it's different for everybody on with starting businesses. But it definitely is a good time because the risk is inherently low, being at the stages that we're at, whether we're married or we're single. Being in college, you just don't have the same responsibilities that you will 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and you won't be as dependent upon the salary that you could be having with a job. So those are all things to keep in mind. And anyway, I just want to say I love you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to let me know what you're thinking. My Instagram handle is Entrepreneur on Campus. If you don't know how to spell that, look it up. I feel like people always mix up the E and the U. Entrepreneur, ENTREPRENEUR on Campus. And you can DM me there. Maybe I'll do a poll. I'm curious if people like this kind of format, having a bunch of different people come on and just answer a question. So thank you guys again for listening. I love you all. Have a good one. Thank you guys again for listening. I love you. Have a good one.